Back, everyone. Kill Meat and Friends joining us now. Special surprise, Governor Mitt Romney. Governor, you're over in Nebraska. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Brian. It's good to be with you this morning.
I know. I saw you get a little testy with one reporter who wanted to talk about marijuana and same-sex marriage yesterday. Has this been a real curveball for you?
Well, actually, she asked, I think, 2 or 3 questions about same-sex marriage and civil unions and then about medical marijuana. And I finally laughed and said, there are some really big issues out there, like if Iran is going to get a nuclear weapon, how to change leadership in Syria, and what it's going to take to get this economy going again. Don't you want to ask about those? So we finally got around to that.
I know it's a reality show that isn't scripted. That's what running for president is. So Governor, I got to tell you, the Washington Post put together a story, and all my preparation for the Fox and Friends and this show, Kill Meat and Friends, I did not see it. I just stumbled across it, and you like to talk about it. It is about what you did or didn't do as a kid around high school age. How would you characterize this piece?
Oh, I'm not going to be too concerned about their piece. They talk about the fact that I played a lot of pranks in high school, and they describe some that you just say to yourself that back in high school, I did some dumb things, and if anybody was hurt by that or offended, obviously I apologize, but. Overall, high school years were a long time ago, and I'm glad I've got some good friends in those years.
Right, and some of them some were speaking out and listed in this story. They talk about a prank that could have gone on in high school with a guy named John Lauber, who they say that you and a couple of his friends, who this guy was thought to be homosexual, cut his hair, pinned him down, and cut his hair. Do you remember any of this?
I don't remember that incident, and I'll tell you, I certainly don't believe that I can't speak for other people, of course, but thought the fellow was homosexual. That was the furthest thing from our minds back in the 1960s. So that was not the case. But as to pranks that were played back then, I don't remember them all. But again, high school days, if I did stupid things, I'm afraid I gotta say sorry for it.
Right, and just one other incident, because everyone's talking about same-sex marriage and tolerance and unions and what do you stand for. It's amazing the timing of this Washington Post story, which is a perspective on your high school years. So to me, it would seem to me that it was somewhere shrink-wrapped, waiting to be unwrapped at the right time, and they thought this was the right time. They also point out an incident in English class with this guy, Gary Hummel, who says he was a closeted gay student at the time, and when he would talk out, Mitt Romney, a young Mitt Romney, would yell, "Atta girl." Do you think that happened?
Well, I really can't remember that. There are a lot of times, my guess is at a boys' school where other boys do something and people say, "Hey, atta girl," but as this person indicated, he was closeted. I had no idea that he was gay. I can't speak of that even today. But as to the teasing or the taunts that go on in high school, that's a long time ago. For me, it's about 48 years ago. So again, if there's anything I said that was offensive to someone, I certainly am sorry about that. Very deeply sorry about that. But there was no harm intended.
They also go on. I mean, it's huge. I cannot believe this story. It's 12 pages in a time, as you mentioned, in which energy is an issue, which the economy is an issue, the collapse of the European economy is an issue. They have a 12-page story on your high school years. But I think one of your classmates says that when you met Ann, it changed you.
Well, there's no question, Brian, that I became a very different person as I met Ann. And then as I went off and served as a missionary for my church, there were elements in life that change you, and I'm a very different person than I was in high school, of course. But I'm glad that I learned as much as I did during those high school years. I wouldn't have had the great opportunities that have come in life. I didn't have the blessing of a good education. But I can tell you, I'm quite a different guy now. That I'm married, have 5 sons, 5 daughters-in-law, and now 18 grandchildren. So, I think at some point this campaign will talk about things like the economy and energy, labor policy, Syria, Iran. I'm hoping at some point the mainstream media is able to get around to those kind of topics.
You know, one of these reporters talked about, just as you were about to officially, as Rick Santorum was dropping out, said, you know what, the Obama administration is ready. They thought it was going to be Romney all the time. They've done opposition research, and we're really going to hit him hard. Do you think this is an example of that?
Well, I can't speak to, the origin of their article. I can tell you that I know there will be a real effort on the part of the president's people to talk about anything other than the here and now. And the here and now, the fact that you have 23 million people out of work or stopped looking for work or underemployed, this is the issue of the day. It's today's economy. And there are going to be some who want to talk about high school. All right? It's like, well, if you really think that's important, be my guest. But the reality is I'm in this race because of my life experiences that have prepared me to get this economy going again and to keep America strong in the face of real challenges around the world.
Right, and we're talking to Governor Mitt Romney now, who's taking a brief stop before another one of his appearances. His schedule is going to get busier and busier. And you just, by the way, Mrs. Romney just sat down with Martha McCallum. Great interview on our channel with Mother's Day here. But, Governor, in a situation like this, when everyone's talking about homosexual rights and same-sex marriage, this article, in my humble opinion, is put out there to show that you grew up in an intolerant environment. Do you think that characterizes you accurately?
No, of course not. The incidents that they're speaking about, in both cases, they indicated that the people involved didn't come out of the closet until years later. The idea that this was something that was known by me or I can't speak for others, but by me is obviously absurd. I had no idea that this person might have been gay. And as the article points out, I participated in a lot of hijinks and pranks during high school. And some may have gone too far, and for that I apologize.
Right. I got real quick. We have a former coworker of yours coming on, Edward Conrad, who wrote the book Unintended Consequences. Conrad, excuse me, who wrote the book Unintended Consequences. Former managing director of Bain Capital. Anything we should know?
He's a very bright guy. He has a very distinct point of view. Not all of my partners and I thought the same way. As a matter of fact, some of my partners are strong Democrats. One actually was a big fundraiser for Barack Obama last time around. So we have differing viewpoints. But Ed has some interesting ideas. I don't agree with all of them. But give him a listen. He's a very capable thinker. And some of the things he has to say will stimulate a lot of people's thinking.
Governor, the job numbers came out. 365,000 people applied for unemployment compensation for the first time. Your reaction?
Well, again, we see more disappointing numbers. It's very clear that people of America are really struggling under the president's failed policies. He has applied some of the old liberal policies in the past. They didn't work then. They haven't worked over the last 4 years, and they sure as heck are not going to work in the future. And we need to return to the free market, free enterprise principles that help drive our economy in the first place. And he's taken us in the wrong direction. I'm looking forward to getting this economy going again. I happen to think we're on the cusp with the right direction of a real resurgence in manufacturing in this country and in a whole host of other industries. I'm very optimistic about the future of America. I know that puts me in a relatively small group these days, but the more I see, the more I'm convinced that with the right energy policies, labor policies, and regulatory policies, tax policies, we can really get this economy going.
And you made a statement that was chronicled in a 30-second ad about President Obama having the courage to make that tough decision to kill bin Laden. And they took a quote from you saying that it's not worth moving heaven and earth to get just one guy. If the expanded remarks indicate that you knew this was more than just about bin Laden. Being that his papers now released indicate he was not in charge of all his cells, especially in Yemen, and that a would-be underwear bomber was actually going to be in place in Yemen, and that this is a much more dispersed war. Have your comments proven correct that it wasn't about one guy?
Well, there's no question in my view, but that is correct. Of course it was worth getting Osama bin Laden, and of course we should have expended great effort to find him and to kill him, and that's the right thing, and I congratulate the president on making that order. At the same time, we have to realize the radical violent jihadism is a far bigger movement than just Osama bin Laden. And we have to be prepared for a long conflict with those that wish to do us harm and wish to harm liberty anywhere in the world. So this is a major effort. It's going to require a major commitment on the part of America. And I must admit, I want to thank the people in the intelligence community that prevented another potential catastrophe with this new version of the underwear bomber. This is you just have to say our intelligence community is really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and just at this hour, no one, maybe for the first time, we can't really say that if we could stop the underwear bomber, if there were other bombs out there to be released, we can honestly say the TSA can't honestly say they could stop it. Does that concern you?
I think we have to recognize that there is no foolproof way of stopping someone who intends to carry out some kind of attack. And in my view, the best resource we have is our intelligence resource that allows us to find these folks before they actually get on aircraft or find their way to other places where people would be harmed. Right. And of course, the best weapon we have are our men and women in uniform, including, of course, those in SEAL Team 6 and those like them, who stand up to the kind of threats that America faces from time to time.
Last question. You're at a Celtic game. You're sitting there in the audience. Unbeknownst to you, the studio show's on. They show a shot of you and go, there's Governor Mitt Romney. Barkley pipes up and says, you seem like a nice guy, but you're going down. You're not going to win in November. You're going down. John McCain has said you want to bet. What does Mitt Romney say?
Hey, I'm in this to win, and I'm planning on winning. I know it's going to be a real battle. I respect Charles Barkley. He's a very colorful guy. He's not always right, but often right. I hope this time I prove to be the guy who's right and that I win this thing.
Right, and you wouldn't dispute that you think you are a nice guy, though.
I'll agree with him on that. And He's a good guy, too. All
right. Governor, have a great day. Thanks for joining us over in Nebraska in the middle of a very busy day, talking about a story that dates back to high school. But unfortunately, we've got to talk about all of it. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Bye-bye.
All right. Listen, we're going to come back and open up the phones. This is Kilmeade and Friends.
Kilmeade and Friends.